This June marks the 30th anniversary of scientists discovering what we now know as AIDS. It has been a devastating epidemic worldwide, but a man right here in the Bay Area may be the first person ever cured of the disease. CBS 5 reporter Hank Plant, who covered the early years of the AIDS epidemic, returns with his exclusive first TV interview with a man known as the Berlin patient.
His name is Timothy Ray Brown, a 45-year-old man now living in the Bay Area who tested positive for HIV back in 1995, but who now has entered the scientific journals as the first man in world history to have his HIV completely eliminated from his body. It's what doctors call a functional cure. He was living in Berlin, Germany in 2007, dealing with HIV and leukemia, when scientists there gave him a bone marrow stem cell transplant that had astounding results.
I quit taking my HIV medication on the day that I got the transplant, and haven't had to take any since.
It's amazing.
Yeah. The leukemia came back, unfortunately, about a year later. And so I got another transplant from the same donor in 2008 and in February. And luckily, both things have been absent.
Leukemia and AIDS?
Right.
Gone?
Right.
Cured?
Yeah. Yeah. All right, thank you.
In fact, his only medical problem these days is one involving his speech and motor skills because of neurological damage after the treatment. But that's getting better. So how did this happen? The Berlin patient received stem cells from a donor who was immune to HIV. In fact, about 1% of Caucasians are immune to HIV. Some say it goes back to the Great Plague. People who survived the plague developed an immunity, and that immunity was passed down to their heirs today. Do your doctors say that you're cured?
Yeah, they do.
And the medical journals?
They do as well.
Cured?
Right.
Am I looking at the first man in world history to be cured of HIV?
I think so.
What do you think about that?
It makes me very happy. Very, very happy.
Needless to say, Timothy is now being monitored by doctors at San Francisco General Hospital and here at UCSF, where we sought out a medical opinion from one of the most respected AIDS researchers in the world, Dr. Jay Levy, who was one of the co-discoverers of the HIV virus.
If you're able to take the white cells from someone and manipulate them so they're no longer infectable by HIV, and those white cells become the whole immune system of that individual, you've got essentially what we call a functional cure.
A functional cure.
That's what the Berlin patient tells us.
We also sought out a medical opinion from Dr. Paul Volberding, another pioneering AIDS expert who has studied the disease for all of its 30 years.
The Berlin patient's a fascinating story. It's not one that can be generalized. You don't want to go out and get a bone marrow transplant, and the bone marrow transplant procedures themselves carry a very real risk of mortality. One element of his treatment, and we don't know which, allowed apparently the virus to be purged from his body. So it's going to be an interesting, I think, productive area to study.
They say he's cured.
Well, knock on wood. He hasn't had any recurrence now for several years, I think, of the virus, and that hasn't happened before in our experience.
Never happened.
Never.
Timothy Brown's radical procedure may not be applicable to many other people with HIV because of the difficulty in doing stem cell transplants and finding the right donor. But this one case does open the door to the field of cure research, which is now gaining more attention. Here at the San Francisco AIDS Foundation, they are now using the word cure after so many avoided it for decades.
You sort of felt like you couldn't say cure for a number of years. Scientists and clinicians and people living with HIV alike felt like that was a sort of promise that was never going to be realized, and it was dangerous to direct a lot of energy towards it.
And now?
And now things have shifted.
Shifted toward the hope that the Berlin patient brings to all of us.
I'm cured of HIV. I had HIV, but I don't anymore.
Words that so many in the scientific community are now cautiously clinging to. In San Francisco, Hank Plant, CBS 5.
The California Institute of Regenerative Medicine is now funding stem cell research here in the Bay Area based on Timothy's case, trying to replicate his success. The goal is to begin clinical trials next year. Hank will be presenting more stories about AIDS presented with the San Francisco AIDS Foundation as we approach the 30th anniversary of the disease. Those stories begin airing here on CBS 5 on Memorial Day, Monday, May 30th.